The room fell silent. The alien princess dropped her crown for a human part. 1. The delegation space station floated in the darkness between stars. It was called Valora Prime, and it was the largest meeting place in the known galaxy. Ships from 100 different worlds came and went every hour. Inside its massive halls, creatures of all shapes and sizes walked together. Some had wings. Some had scales. Some had no bodies at all and existed only as floating lights. Today was special. The Galactic Assembly was meeting to discuss peace between the star systems. Representatives from dozens of alien species had gathered in the Great Hall. The room was enormous, with walls made of transparent crystal that showed the stars outside. Floating platforms carried delegates to their seats high above the central floor. Princess Yura stood near the window, looking out at the void. She was beautiful in a way that was hard to describe. Her skin was the color of moonlight, smooth and faintly glowing. Her eyes were large and violet, with no pupils visible. Her hair flowed behind her like liquid silver, moving even when there was no wind. On her head sat a crown made of crystallized starlight. It sparkled with colors that had no names in human languages. She was the heir to the Silenthian Empire, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Her people had built starships when most species were still living in caves. They had conquered 1,000 worlds and ruled them for 10,000 years. Yura had grown up believing that her kind was superior to all others. It was simply a fact, like the darkness of space or the heat of stars. Her father, the Emperor, had sent her to observe the assembly. He wanted her to learn about diplomacy before she took the throne. She found it boring. The alien delegates talked endlessly about trade routes and border disputes. They argued over resources and treaties. Yura listened with half an ear, already counting the days until she could return home. Then the humans arrived. They came through the main entrance in a small group of 5. They wore simple dark suits, nothing like the elaborate robes and armor of the other species. They carried no weapons that anyone could see. They walked with their heads up, but they did not swagger or strut like the proud warriors of the Krellhive or the wealthy merchants of the Vothani Collective. Yura watched them with curiosity. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel a few decades ago. Their planet was small and far away, on the edge of explored space. Most species considered them primitive and unimportant. Some delegates had argued against inviting them at all. The leader of the human group was a man named Kang Do-hyun. He appeared to be middle-aged by human standards, with gray hair at his temples and lines around his eyes. He was not tall or particularly strong-looking. He moved slowly and carefully, like someone who thought before acting. His face was calm, almost peaceful. Behind him walked a younger woman named Park Jisoo. She had the bearing of a soldier, alert and watchful. Her eyes moved constantly, studying every corner of the room. She was smaller than most of the aliens around her, but she did not seem afraid. If anything, she looked curious. The other 3 humans were support staff. One was an engineer named Yu Mai-rei, a woman with short hair and clever hands that were already examining her tablet. The other 2 were young assistants who stayed close to their ambassador. Vorthani delegate intercepted the humans before they could reach their assigned seats. The Vorthani were tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms. They were known for their wealth and their arrogance. This one wore robes covered in precious gems. The humans, the Vorthani said loudly, making sure others could hear. How interesting that you were invited. Tell me, how does it feel to be surrounded by your betters? Your species lives, 70 or 80 years. I am 300 and still young. My grandfather met your great-grandparents when they were still hitting each other with sticks. Several nearby delegates laughed. Yura watched the humans, expecting them to look embarrassed or angry. But Doyun simply smiled. It was a patient smile, the kind a teacher might give to a difficult student. "You are correct," Doyun said. "We do not live long by galactic standards. But I have always believed that a short life teaches you to value every moment. We accomplish much precisely because we have little time. We cannot afford to waste years on things that do not matter." The Vorthani blinked, unsure how to respond. The human had not insulted him, but somehow the words felt like a challenge. Before he could think of a reply, Doyun nodded politely and led his group to their seats. Yura found herself staring. There had been no anger in the human's voice, no wounded pride. He had simply stated a truth and moved on. It was such a strange response that she did not know what to make of it. She made her way across the hall, her guards following at a respectful distance. She wanted a closer look at these creatures. They were so small, so fragile. Their skin was soft and easily damaged. They had no claws, no natural weapons, no telepathic abilities. By every measure, they should have been at the bottom of the galactic hierarchy, and yet they sat in their seats as if they belonged there. Jisoo was sketching something on a notepad. Mireille was quietly discussing something with the two assistants. Dohyun was reviewing documents, occasionally looking up to observe the other delegates with those calm, thoughtful eyes. One of the assistants noticed Yura watching. He nudged his ambassador. Dohyun looked up and met her gaze across the crowded hall. He did not bow or look away. He simply nodded once in acknowledgement, as if greeting an equal. Yira felt something strange in her chest. No one had ever looked at her like that. They either groveled before her rank or pretended to ignore her completely. This human did neither. He simply saw her as a person. She did not know why, but she wanted to learn more about him. About all of them. The assembly session began, and Yura took her seat. But for the first time since arriving on Valora Prime, she found herself paying attention. Not to the speeches about trade routes and treaties, but to the small group of humans sitting quietly in the corner, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. There was something about them, something she could not name. She did not know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. The room fell silent. The alien princess dropped her crown for a human part 2. The crisis 3 days passed. The assembly continued its slow work of negotiation and compromise. Yura found herself looking for the humans more often than she wanted to admit. She watched how they interacted with other species. She noticed how they listened more than they spoke. She saw how they treated everyone with the same calm respect. Whether they were speaking to powerful emperors or simple maintenance workers. On the morning of the 4th day, everything changed. Yura was in the observation deck, looking out at the stars when the first explosion shook the station. The floor trembled beneath her feet. Alarm lights began flashing red. A voice came over the speakers, speaking in the common galactic language. "This is the Burning Dawn. We have taken control of this station's life support systems. All exits are sealed. All ships are locked in their docking bays." Yura's blood went cold. She knew that name. The Burning Dawn was a terrorist group made up of Silenthian extremists. They believed her father's empire had grown weak through peace. They wanted to return to the old ways of conquest and domination. They hated everything the assembly represented. The voice continued. "Our demands are simple. Princess Yura of the Silenthian Empire will renounce the peace accords before the assembly. She will declare the superiority of our people over all others. She will call for war against the lesser species." The voice paused. When it spoke again, it was filled with cold anger. "If she refuses, we will kill everyone aboard this station. You have 6 hours." Chaos erupted. In the great hall. Delegates screamed and ran in all directions. The Vorthani were the first to flee, their gem-covered robes flying behind them as they rushed toward their ships. They found the docking bays sealed with force fields they could not break. The insectoid Krell delegates sealed themselves in their quarters, clicking in terror. Others argued and shouted, blaming each other for the situation. Yura's guards surrounded her immediately. They were well-trained soldiers, loyal to the crown, but she could see the fear in their eyes. They did not know what to do. Their training had not prepared them for this. "We must hide you, princess," the captain of her guard said. "We must find a secure location and wait for rescue." "Rescue from where?" Yura asked. "The station is sealed. No signals can get in or out. No one knows what is happening here." The captain had no answer. It was then that Yura noticed the humans. While everyone else panicked, they had gathered in a calm circle near their seats. Do-hyun was speaking quietly, giving instructions. Jisoo was already moving toward the nearest security station. Mireille had opened a panel in the wall and was examining the wires inside. Yura pushed past her guards and walked toward them. The captain tried to stop her, but she waved him away. "What are you doing?" she asked Do-hyun. He looked up at her with those calm eyes. "We are assessing the situation, Highness. Panic helps no one. We need information before we can act." "The station is controlled by terrorists," Yura said. "What can you possibly do? You are only 5 people. You have no weapons, no special abilities. The Burning Dawn has dozens of fighters, and they control all the critical systems." Do-hyun smiled slightly. "You would be surprised what 5 determined people can accomplish." Jisoo returned from the security station. "I have partial access to the internal cameras," she reported. "The terrorists are concentrated in the station's core. That is where the life support systems are located. They have approximately 40 fighters and about 30 hostages." "How did you get access?" Yura asked. "The security systems are encrypted." "I asked nicely," Jisoo said with a small smile. "And then I guessed the password. It was the station commander's birthday. People never choose good passwords." Mireille looked up from the wall panel. "I can access some of the secondary systems from here. The main controls are locked, but there are backdoors. It will take time, but I might be able to create some openings." Dawn nodded. "Good. Jisoo, can you organize the remaining security forces?" Most of them scattered when the attack began, but there must be some who are willing to fight. "Already working on it," Jisoo said. "There is a group of Krell warriors who did not retreat with the others. They are confused and leaderless, but they are brave. I think I can work with them." Yura stared at them in amazement. They were not panicking. They were not waiting for someone else to save them. They were simply doing what needed to be done. "How?" she asked. "How are you so calm? This could be the end. We could all die in a few hours." Do-hyun looked at her. His expression was serious but not unkind. "Highness, my species spent 100,000 years living on a planet that wanted to kill us. We survived ice ages and plagues and natural disasters. We survived wars and famines and countless other catastrophes. We learned that panic is a luxury we cannot afford. When trouble comes, we work the problem. We find solutions. We adapt." He paused and his smile returned, tired but genuine. "Besides, this is just Tuesday for us." Yura did not understand the reference, but she understood the meaning. This was not new to them. Danger and crisis were familiar ground. They had faced death before and survived. "What can I do?" she asked. Do-hyun raised an eyebrow. "You wish to help?" "They are my people," Yura said. "The Burning Dawn claims to act in the name of the Silenthian Empire. They are wrong, but their shame falls on me. I cannot hide while others fight." For a long moment, Do-hyun studied her. Then he nodded. "You know this station better than we do. You know Silenthian tactics and how these terrorists think. Stay with me. Help me coordinate our response. And when the time comes, help me talk to the hostages. They will listen to their princess." Yira felt something shift inside her. For the first time in her life, someone was asking her to be useful. Not because of her crown or her title, but because of what she could actually do. "I will help," she said, dot around them. The station groaned as another minor explosion echoed through its halls. The clock was ticking. 6 hours to save everyone aboard. But for the first time since the crisis began, Yira felt something other than fear. She felt hope. The room fell silent. The alien princess dropped. Her crown for a human Part 3. The rescue. 4 hours remained when they finished their planning. The situation was clear. The burning dawn held the station's core. Their leader, a fanatic named Varath, had barricaded himself inside with his fighters and 30 hostages. The main corridors were blocked by force fields and armed guards. Any direct assault would fail, but Mireille had found another way. "There are maintenance tunnels that run through the entire station," she explained, pointing at a holographic map. "They were built for repair workers to access the life support pipes. Most are too small for the larger alien species to use, but they are just wide enough for humans." Jisoo studied the map. That route goes through 3 zero-gravity sections. The temperature in some areas is below freezing, and there is very little oxygen. It would take hours to crawl through. 4 hours, Mireille said. Maybe 5. And we would arrive exhausted. "It is impossible," said the Krell commander, who had joined their planning session. His name was impossible for humans to pronounce, so they called him Click, after the sound his mandibles made when he spoke. No species could survive such a journey and still be fit to fight. "We can do it," Jisoo said quietly. "It will not be pleasant, but we can do it." The other aliens in the room exchanged looks. Some were skeptical. Others were simply confused. How could these soft, fragile creatures accomplish what no one else could? Princess Yira stepped forward. "I am coming with you." Everyone turned to look at her. "Highness, that is not wise," Doyun said. "The journey will be extremely difficult. Your guards would never allow it." "My guards do not make my decisions," Yira replied. "I know the station's layout better than any of you. I can guide you through the maintenance tunnels. And when we reach the core, Varath might hesitate if he sees me. He claims to act for the glory of my people. He will not want to harm their princess. Or he will use you as a hostage," Jisoo pointed out. "Then I will be one more person you need to rescue." Yira lifted her chin. "I am not afraid. I will not hide while others risk their lives for my people's mistakes." Dahin studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well. But you follow our orders. When we tell you to move, you move. When we tell you to hide, you hide. Agreed?" "Agreed." The team that entered the maintenance tunnels was small. Jisoo led the way, followed by Mireille and one of the human assistants, a young man named Beek Taman, who had served in the military before becoming a diplomat. Yira came next, with Doyun bringing up the rear. The tunnels were exactly as terrible as Mireille had described. They crawled on their hands and knees, through passages barely wide enough for their bodies. The metal walls pressed in from all sides. In some places, they had to flatten themselves and wiggle forward like worms. Yira's ceremonial robes were soon torn and dirty. Her crown scraped against the ceiling, and she finally removed it, tucking it into her belt. The zero-gravity sections were worse. Without weight to anchor them, they floated helplessly, bouncing off walls and each other. Jisoo had brought ropes, and they tied themselves together to keep from drifting apart. But every movement was exhausting. Pulling yourself through a tunnel without gravity required muscles that Yira did not know she had. The cold sections were the worst of all. The temperature dropped until their breath came out in white clouds. Frost formed on the walls and on their skin. Yura began to shiver uncontrollably. Her silver skin, which had always seemed so perfect, turned pale and blue. "Keep moving," Do-Yoon said from behind her. His voice was calm despite the cold. "Movement creates heat. If you stop, you freeze." "I cannot," Yura gasped. "I am too tired. You can." His hand touched her back, warm through her thin robes. "One movement at a time. 1 meter at a time. Do not think about how far we have to go. Just think about the next movement." Yura forced herself forward. 1 movement. 1 meter. Then another. And another. Somewhere in the frozen darkness, Mireille began to talk. She spoke about her home on Earth, about the mountains where she grew up, where snow covered everything in winter. She talked about her grandmother, who had survived a war and taught her that nothing was impossible if you refused to quit. "She used to say that humans are like water," Mireille said, her voice shaking with cold. "We flow around obstacles. We find cracks in every wall. We wear down mountains over time, not because we are strong, but because we do not stop." Yura listened to her words and kept crawling. The humans around her were suffering just as much as she was. Their breath was ragged. Their movements were slow. But they did not stop. They did not complain. They simply kept going, 1 meter at a time. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnels began to warm. The gravity returned. The passage widened enough that they could stand. "We are close," Jisoo whispered. "The core is just ahead." They stopped to rest for a few minutes. Yura leaned against the wall, her body shaking with exhaustion. She looked at the humans around her. They were dirty and bruised. Their skin was red from cold and scratched from crawling. But their eyes were bright and alert. "Why?" Yura asked. "Why did you do this? You could have stayed safe. You could have waited for the terrorists to be stopped by someone else. Why risk your lives for people who are not even your own species?" Do-Yoon looked at her. In the dim light of the tunnel, his eyes seemed very deep. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "Because we could help, so we had to help. That is what it means to be human." Yura stared at him. In her entire life, no one had ever said something so simple and so profound. Her people talked about glory and honor and the superiority of their bloodline. But they rarely talked about doing what was right simply because it was right. "I think," she said slowly, "I have much to learn from your species." Do-Hyun smiled. "We have much to learn from each other, Highness." Jisoo checked her weapon. "Enough talk. We have terrorists to stop and hostages to rescue. Everyone ready?" They nodded and they moved forward into the darkness. The room fell silent. The alien princess dropped her crown for a human part. 4. The confrontation. The station's core was a massive circular room filled with machinery. Pipes and cables covered the walls like metal vines. In the center stood the main life support controls, surrounded by blinking lights and humming generators. This was the heart of Valora Prime. Without it, everyone aboard would die. The Burning Dawn had made it their fortress. Varath stood near the main console, tall and proud in his dark armor. He was a Soenthian like Yura, with the same silver skin and violet eyes. But where Yura's face showed curiosity and compassion, Varath showed only hatred and contempt. He believed that the old ways were the only true ways. He believed that other species were inferior and should be conquered or destroyed. He believed that peace was weakness. His fighters were scattered around the room, weapons ready. The hostages sat in a corner, guarded by 4 soldiers with rifles. Among them were high-ranking delegates from several worlds, including the Vorthani who had mocked the humans on the first day. He did not look arrogant now. He looked terrified. Jisoo studied the room through a small opening in the maintenance hatch. She counted the enemies. She noted their positions. She planned. 20 fighters on the main floor, she whispered. 4 guarding hostages. 10 more on the upper catwalks. Plus Vorath at the console. They are expecting an attack from the main entrance. They are not expecting us. Can we take them? Taman asked. Maybe. If we are fast and lucky. Jizu paused. Myre, can you disable the lights from here? Myre was already examining a junction box nearby. Give me 2 minutes. They waited in tense silence. Outside the hatch, they could hear Vorath speaking to his followers. He was broadcasting a message to the assembly, demanding Yura's appearance. His voice was filled with righteous anger. The princess hides like a coward, he declared. She is afraid to face the truth. Our empire has fallen from glory. We once ruled 1,000 worlds, and now we beg for peace like frightened children. This is not the way of our ancestors. This is not the way of the Silenthian people. Yura listened with growing anger. This man claimed to speak for her people, but he understood nothing about them. He saw only the past, not the future. He saw only strength through violence, not strength through wisdom. Ready, Myre whispered. Jisoo nodded. On my signal. 3, 2, 1. The lights went out. For exactly 5 seconds, the core was plunged into absolute darkness. It was enough. Jisoo moved like a shadow. She dropped from the maintenance hatch and landed silently behind the nearest guard. Before he could react, she had disarmed him and knocked him unconscious. Taemin followed, taking down 2 more fighters with quick, precise movements. When the emergency lights flickered on, chaos erupted. The Burning Dawn fighters fired blindly, confused by the sudden attack. Their shots went wild, hitting nothing but machinery. Meanwhile, the station security forces that Click had positioned at the main entrance launched their own assault. The terrorists were caught between 2 attacks. In the middle of the chaos, Do-hyun made his way toward Vorath. The terrorist leader saw him coming. He was a trained warrior, far stronger and faster than any human. He smiled coldly and raised his weapon. A human? Vorath laughed. You send a human to stop me? This is an insult. Do-hyun did not respond. He simply kept walking forward. Vorath fired. The shot should have killed Do-hyun instantly. But at the last moment, the ambassador twisted aside. The energy bolt missed him by centimeters. Before Vorath could fire again, Do-hyun was on him. What followed was not elegant. It was not the graceful combat of trained warriors. It was brutal and desperate and ugly. Do-hyun was smaller and weaker than his opponent, but he fought with a ferocity that shocked everyone watching. He took blows that should have put him down and kept fighting. He refused to quit. He refused to fall. In the end, Vorath lay on the floor, disarmed and beaten. Do-hyun stood over him, breathing hard, blood running from a cut on his forehead. How? Vorath gasped. How did you defeat me? I am stronger, faster, superior in every way. Do-hyun looked down at him with something that might have been pity. You expected me to fight fair, he said. I did not. The battle was won. The terrorists were captured or dead. The hostages were freed. But Vorath had one last move to make. Fools, he snarled. He pressed a hidden button on his armor. If I cannot win, no one wins. Alarms began screaming. Red lights flashed across every console. Self-destruct activated, a mechanical voice announced. Core overload in 5 minutes. All personnel evacuate immediately. But there was nowhere to evacuate to. The docking bays were still sealed. The escape pods had been disabled. If the core exploded, everyone aboard the station would die. Myre ran to the main console. Her fingers flew across the controls, trying to stop the sequence. But the system was locked. Vorath had encrypted the shutdown codes. I need more time, she shouted. There is no more time, Click said. We must flee. Flee where? Jizu demanded. The radiation levels began rising. The core was overheating. Anyone who stayed near the console would receive a lethal dose within minutes. Everyone get out, Myray said. Her voice was calm. Myray, no, Diane said. There is no other way? She looked at him with clear eyes. If I do not stop this, everyone dies. Thousands of people. You know I am right. Yura stepped forward. You will die. The radiation. Maybe, maybe not. Myray smiled slightly. Humans are tougher than we look. Now go. Let me do my job. Dahu stood frozen for a moment. Then he grabbed Yura's arm and pulled her toward the exit. She struggled against him. We cannot leave her. Yura screamed, we must. Dahu's voice was rough with emotion. She made her choice. We must honor it by surviving. They ran. Behind them, Myray worked alone at the console. Her fingers dancing over controls she barely understood. Radiation burning through her body with every passing second. 30 seconds before the explosion. The countdown stopped. Got it. Murray's voice came over the communication system. Weak. Tired, but alive. The core is stable. Though I would really appreciate a medic now. And maybe a vacation. Yura felt tears running down her face. She did not know when she had started crying. She did it, she whispered. She saved us all. Dahu nodded. His own eyes were wet. That is what humans do, he said quietly. We survive. And we make sure others survive with us. The room fell silent. The alien princess dropped. Her crown for a human Part 5. The choice. 3 days passed after the battle. Myray survived. The doctors said it was a miracle. The radiation should have killed her, but somehow her body held on. She would carry scars for the rest of her life. Her hands were bandaged, and her hair had begun to fall out. But she was alive, and she smiled whenever anyone visited her in the medical bay. Scars mean you lived, she told Yura during one visit. My grandmother used to say that. Yura had spent hours at Murray's bedside. She could not explain why. She had never cared for anyone outside her own family before. But watching this human woman laugh and joke, despite everything she had suffered, something changed inside the princess. Something she did not fully understand yet. The assembly gathered again in the great hall. The delegates who had fled or hidden during the attack returned, many looking ashamed. Some were still arrogant, pretending nothing had happened. The Vorthani delegate who had mocked humanity on the first day could not meet anyone's eyes. Yura's father, the emperor, appeared as a holographic projection. He sat on his distant throne, his expression cold and unreadable. The Silenthian High Council floated beside him, watching their princes with calculating eyes. This was supposed to be Yura's moment of triumph. She had helped defeat the terrorists. She had shown courage in the face of danger. She was expected to return home as a hero. In time, she would take the throne and rule the empire, as her ancestors had done for generations. But as Yura stood in the center of the chamber, looking out at the assembled delegates, she knew that path was no longer possible for her. She reached up and removed her crown. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to her. Her father leaned forward on his throne, his cold expression finally cracking into surprise. The High Council members whispered urgently to each other. Even the humans looked confused. Yura held the crown in her hands for a long moment. It was beautiful, made of crystallized starlight that sparkled with impossible colors. It represented 10,000 years of history, 10,000 years of power, 10,000 years of tradition. She set it gently on the floor. I have spent my life believing in our empire's greatness, Yura said. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly. I was taught that we are superior to other species. that our ways are the only true ways. That strength means conquest and power and domination. She paused, looking at her father's projection. I was taught wrong. The High Council erupted in protests. Her father raised his hand for silence, his face like carved stone. When the Burning Dawn attacked this station, our people panicked, Yura continued. They fled. They hid. They waited for someone else to save them. And when salvation came, it did not come from our ancient bloodlines or our superior technology. It came from a small group of humans who most of us had dismissed as primitive and unimportant. She turned to look at the human delegation. Do-hyun sat with his calm expression. Jisoo stood at attention. Mireille was there in her hover chair, her bandaged hands folded in her lap. They did not speak. They simply listened. These humans taught me something that our empire has forgotten, Yura said. True strength is not about power over others. It is about the courage to act when action seems impossible. It is about the willingness to suffer for strangers. It is about the simple, stubborn refusal to give up hope. She turned back to face her father. I cannot rule an empire that has forgotten these truths. I cannot sit on a throne and pretend that I have not been changed by what I witnessed here. And I will not return to a life that asks me to value tradition over what is right. The Emperor's projection flickered. When he spoke, his voice was harsh. You would abandon your people? Your family? Your duty? I would serve my people better from here, Yura replied. Let me stay as Silenthia's permanent ambassador to humanity. Let me learn from them. And let me teach our people what I have learned. Perhaps in time, I can help our empire remember what we lost. This is madness, the Emperor said. You are my heir. You cannot simply walk away from your destiny. Destiny is not something given to us by birth, Yura said. It is something we choose through our actions. Today, I choose a different path. The Emperor stared at her through the holographic connection. For a long moment, father and daughter faced each other in silence. Then, slowly, something changed in the Emperor's expression. It might have been sadness. It might have been pride. It was hard to tell. You have your mother's stubbornness, he said finally. Very well. If this is your choice, I will not stop you. But you will always be welcome home. Yura bowed her head. Thank you, father. The holographic projection faded. The High Council vanished with it, still protesting. Yura stood alone in the center of the chamber, her crown lying forgotten at her feet. She walked toward the human delegation. Do-hyun rose to meet her. He looked at her with those calm, patient eyes that had seen so much. That was dramatic, he said. Despite everything, Yura laughed. I learned from the best. She extended her hand, the way humans did when greeting each other. Do-hyun looked at it for a moment, then took it in his own. Ambassador Kang, she said. I believe we have much work to do. That we do, he agreed. Welcome to the team, Ambassador Yura. Behind them, Mireille cheered weakly from her hover chair. Jisoo allowed herself a small smile. Even Taemin and the other assistants looked pleased as they walked out of the great hall together. Yura felt lighter than she had in years. She had given up her crown, her title, her place in history. But she had gained something far more valuable. She had found a purpose worth fighting for. And across the galaxy, the story spread. The alien princess who dropped her crown for a human. Not for love, though that might come in time. Not for power or politics or personal gain. But for something simpler and more profound. For the belief that strength is not about what you take, but about what you give. That courage is not about being fearless, but about being afraid and acting anyway. And that sometimes, the smallest and most fragile species can teach the mightiest empires how to be truly great. The stars shone cold and distant outside the station windows. But inside, for the first time in 10,000 years, something new had begun. Something human. The end.